Syria state-run TV says 3 civilians were wounded in airstrikes on a military facility in the city of Homs. Meanwhile, supporters of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad gather in the streets of Damascus in defiance of the joint attack by the U.S., France, and the U.K. Jaffer joins us now from our Washington bureau with more details about this. He is the founder of the National Security Institute, and he's a former senior advisor to the House Intelligence Committee, as well as former White House counsel to President Bush. Thanks for joining us well, it's really early in the morning right now for you, Jamil, so thanks for staying up with us. Jackie and I are used to this all-nighter thing that we do, but obviously this is for a very difficult situation. That is what to do about Bashar al-Assad and his penchant for using chemical weapons. Did the United States, the UK, and France send a clear message that enough is enough?
Well, I think it's clear that we've made the point that this is not an acceptable form of behavior. You cannot attack your own people with these chemical weapons. It violates all sorts of international norms, and we will stand up for it and do something about it. And the president made clear in his statement tonight that this is not just a one-off thing. If this continues, it will be a sustained campaign, and we will continue to do what it takes until Bashar al-Assad gets the message that this is not acceptable, and frankly, until the Russians and Iranians get the message that their support for Bashar al-Assad cannot stand if he continues to do this activity.
Let me read for you a little bit the statement by the UN Secretary General about Syria. He says, I have been following closely the reports of airstrikes in Syria conducted by the United States, France, and the United Kingdom. There's an obligation, particularly when dealing with matters of peace and security, to act consistently with the Charter of the United Nations and with international law in general. And I'm going to go down here. He says, any use of chemical weapons is abhorrent. The suffering it causes is horrendous. I have repeatedly expressed my deep disappointment that the Security Council failed to agree on a dedicated mechanism for effective accountability for the use of chemical weapons in Syria. And then he goes on to urge the Security Council to assume its responsibilities and fill this gap. Do we go back to the table? We've heard UN Ambassador Nikki Haley repeatedly say that Russia has to actually do the right thing.
Well, look, I mean, this is one of the challenges of the UN, right? You've got 5 permanent members. Each of them has a veto, includes us, but it also includes Russia. And so Russia could veto any action by the Security Council, and it pretty much indicated they would do so if the Security Council sought to act against Bashar Assad and take action. So we'll see what happens. I think there's no reason not to try once again and put this before the Security Council, make it clear that Russia is the problem here. Because the reality is, as the president said forthrightly today in front of the American people, Russia and Iran are part of the problem, and they need to behave appropriately here.
I mean, Jamil, you go back to 2013, right? And Russia was given the task of ensuring to the world, which they stated that they would do, they would help get rid of those chemical weapons that had been amassed over years and under Bashar al-Assad's control with his regime there in Syria. So what happens when Secretary of State John Kerry during the Obama administration says all those weapons are gone, we trust them, but we didn't verify it?
Well, look, I mean, this goes back to, Kelly, as you're saying, the Reagan doctrine of trust but verify. You know, the Obama administration's position on this has proven to be a mistake. You know, they thought that the threat of the use of force would bring Russia and Bashar Assad and the Syrians to the table, and they get rid of the chemical weapons. As you said, John Kerry famously said, they're all gone. We always knew that wasn't true because just soon thereafter, Bashar Assad started attacking his own people with chemical weapons, including chlorine and sarin later on. And so we knew that it never actually worked, and yet we sort of continued the false sort of narrative. And the challenge, I think, what part of it was, to be frank, was the desire to get the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, done, and keep that in place with the Iranian support for the Syrian regime. And so, you know, we're back where we thought we'd be because the deal never was a real deal with the Russians. It was never a real deal, you know, with the Iranians backing Hezbollah, which was ultimately backing the Syrian regime.
My time's running short here. So what's the next step? Give me some next steps here.
Well, look, I think the big thing is we've got to be prepared to take more action if this behavior continues on the part of the Syrians. I think we have to actually penalize Russia and Iran for their support of Syria, because at the end of the day, the Assad regime doesn't survive if the Russians and Iranians don't back him. And so we've got to take the fight to the Russians and Iranians. They still have paid no real price for this support, and we've got to exact some price from them too.
All right, we'll leave it there. Jamil Jaffer, founder, National Security Institute. Thanks, sir.